Balake. Where's Balake at?
My name's Blake.
Do you want to go to war, Balake? I'm for real. Ron.
Ron is here, everyone. Welcome back for more SPTV, where every day is one step closer to the total collapse of Scientology. Guys, we're talking today about Scientology's child counselors. Now, you might think that by that I mean counselors who counsel children. You would be mistaken. I'm talking about children who are trained to be counselors. Scientology calls them auditors. It's Scientology's version. Well, they call it what? Spiritual counseling, I think is how they describe auditing. And in Scientology, because they believe that everyone here on earth is not a human being or a body, but an immortal spiritual being that's 60-some trillion years old, they also believe there's not actually any such thing as a child. There's only a child body. But inside that child body is a spiritual being that's 60-some trillion years old. And there's really no difference between a child and an adult except for the biological age of the meat sac that they happen to be animating. And therefore, there are no protections built into, there are no protections in Scientology for children. There's no guardrails. There's no special protections or rules to protect children or limit what they can be exposed to. There's no such thing as age-appropriate content in Scientology. It doesn't exist. It's a concept that doesn't exist. And this is what leads to Scientologists pushing children, young Scientology children, to train as professional Scientology auditors, which you would most closely compare to a counselor in the real world. And also there's this other dynamic of, because Scientologists believe that we're immortal spiritual beings and that you live lifetime after lifetime on this prison planet, if a Scientology family has a young child, they're hoping that this child is a reincarnated Scientologist from their past life. And one of the biggest indicators that this child really is, in fact, a reincarnated Scientologist is if the child expresses an interest in doing professional Scientology auditor training from a very young age, because that is an indicator that they're drawn to it or they're remembering it or whatever. And therefore, Scientology families will push their children to start Scientology training at a young age. And I'm talking about 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old. Now, imagine if you showed up for a therapy appointment and your therapist was a 13-year-old. That's what happens in Scientology. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And I'm here to talk about it with the one and only, literally, Serge. Welcome, Serge.
What's up? What's up?
We're going to kick some butt today. Guys, if you're not already subscribed to Serge, you can find him on YouTube at Serge Del Mar or at literally Serge. Okay, we got a couple things for you today. This is Scientology's latest version of its professional auditor training course, Academy Level 0. There are courses that you do in Scientology that get you ready for professional auditor training. Those are called prerequisites or prereqs. This is the first actual Scientology auditor course. And after we share a video with you, we're going to show you one of the processes in here that's arguably one of the most disgusting things you could ever subject a child to, whether it's the child receiving the auditing or whether it's the child doing the auditing. Okay. But before we get to that, we're going to share with you a video that was produced by David Miscavige, shown by David Miscavige at a major international Scientology event back in May of 1996, when he was launching what they called back then the Golden Age of Tech. It's now known as Golden Age of Tech 1 because in 2013, there was a Golden Age of Tech 2. But this is when David Miscavige was introducing a new method of training Scientology auditors by turning every auditing procedure into a drill. And anyway, I don't even know that it's worth getting into, but the video that we're about to share with you is the video that David Miscavige showed to all Scientologists in the world at that event. And you're going to notice something about this video, and maybe we just play it. How about that? Let's play it, and then we'll take questions about it. I'm going to go full screen on this, and I'll share it this way. Oh, that's not full screen. And here we go.
So, what are we going to do today?
Don't worry about a thing. Just please be seated and we'll start.
Sure.
Ready to start?
Yeah, sure, let's go.
Start of drill. You start a session as first action, check the RC breaker and reach at the fall. What do?
Take up the rudiment.
Good. The PC answers yes. He does have an RC break. What do?
Get the data on it briefly.
Good. The PC tells about the ARC break. What do you do?
Find out by assessment which point the ARC break occurred on.
Good. What do you say?
Was that a break in affinity, reality, communication, understanding?
Good. The assessment reads on communication with the fall. What do you do?
Check it with the PC.
Good. The PC replies that he feels this is a break in ARC, not a break in communication, and does not understand why this assessment is being done. What do you do?
I would indicate it was a break in ARC.
Flunk! The correct answer is clear the ARC break assessment procedure with the PC so he understands it. Here's a reference.
The coach ensures the student restudies the reference, clearing his misunderstoods until he fully understands it. Then they begin again at the question he flunked and carry forward with the drill.
Restart drill. The PC replies that he feels this is a break in ARC, not a break in communication, and does not understand why this assessment is being done. What do you do?
Clear the ARC break assessment procedure with the PC so he understands it.
Very good. After clearing up the action of ARC break assessment, the PC says that he gets how this works, but does not publish.
They continue with the drill, page after page, with the coach asking questions from the drill pack and making sure the students' answers are correct. On each flunk, they clear up any misunderstoods to ensure the auditor fully understands the LRH reference. They carry on doing this over and over again until he can do it all the way through the pack, from start to finish, with no flunks. Everything that could possibly happen while running an ARC break is covered, from the most fundamental to the most difficult.
You asked for an earlier similar ARC break. The PC says no and the question does not read. You check if there's any more to his last answer and he says no. You put the suppress button on the earlier similar question and it does not read. You check and validate, no read. Then you check careful, fail to reveal anxious about and protest, no reads. Then you check not is, abandoned and misunderstood, no reads. You check for a bypass suffix that didn't read. You check for a recession, miswithhold, and no read. What do you do?
You direct the PC's attention to a charged area from the last ARC break that was run and find out if there's anything more on that area.
Cool, pass.
Yes.
All righty. Okay. What are some thoughts you have?
I mean, I'm almost speechless. The girl has a Sea Org sign on her shirt. I don't know if anyone caught that, but there's the Sea Org thing right here on her. And she couldn't have been, what, 10, 11 years old?
I didn't catch that.
Yeah. She has a Sea Org shirt, like with the little thing here. Yeah. Right there. You see, like right in the middle of the thing is the Sea Org emblem.
Got it. So when I got to Flag in 1993, there was this, I mean, I was only 13 myself, but I remember when in the co-audit, the main academy co-audit course room, there was this girl, I don't think she was older than 12. And she was already on her academy level 2. This is academy level 0.
Mm-hmm.
She spoke English, Italian, and French, and was already on her academy level 2. So she, of course, was considered to be a reincarnated Scientologist and treated like a little superstar. And Germar Probst was the co-audit supervisor at that time. You remember Germar?
Yeah, this German guy that was very skinny and curly hair.
Yeah. And so, my brother was probably 14 or 15 when he started his academy levels. He and I were on different training paths. So I didn't actually do my academy levels until like I was in my 20s, but he did his academy levels back then. How old were you when you did your academy levels?
12.
Right.
Right.
12. Right.
Yeah.
And so there is, on Academy Level 0, there's two levels of Scientology's bridge to total freedom that you learn how to audit. By the way, this daughter, it wasn't her mom, the president of Celebrity Center. Do you remember what's that girl's name? I don't remember the girl's name. Is she Susan Watson's daughter, or am I getting it mixed up with someone? She's someone else's daughter.
She's someone else's daughter, but it's not Susan Watson.
Okay, I'm going to check in the live. Do you see the live chat? Watch the live chat. If anyone remembers who this, because her parents were SEERG members. Right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. The name is trying to come to me, but I just can't remember it.
For people asking where they can find this video, the name of the video is, if you search this on YouTube, The Golden Age of Tech Presentation by Chairman of the Board, RTC, Mr. David Miscavige. Okay, now let me see. Okay, the two levels of Scientology's bridge that you learn to audit on this course is ARC straight wire and grade 0. How would you describe these two levels of Scientology's bridge to total freedom? Like if you're describing them to someone.
I mean, ARC straight wire, everything starts out kind of like, everything kind of gets harder and harder. So ARC straight wire is very sort of like all about, recalling stuff, because they're telling you like, oh, you're going to really recall things after you do this, drills, ARC straight wire processes. You're really going to have a really great recall, and they're just sending you back. And can you recall a time you were happy? Can you recall a time of this? So it's like, it's like a PG version of what's going to happen in the XXX rated grade 0, where, routine 0A and 0B alone, just those two processes alone speak for themselves.
So would you agree that ARC straight wire, it's essentially a memory exercise? It's trying to get you used to recalling things in your past. Just the act of recall doesn't really matter what you're recalling. And that grade 0, that's ARC straight wire. And then above ARC straight wire is grade 0. And grade 0 is supposed to get you able and willing to comfortably discuss any subject with any person. And this is being done because in your later levels of auditing, they want you to be able to spill your guts to your auditor without, they want to make it as easy as possible for you. They want to grease this line as much as possible for you to just spill your guts to your auditor without being embarrassed about it or whatever. They want you to get used to talking about anything to anyone, even the most disgusting things, even to the most disgusting people. Is that a good characterization of it?
Yeah, I mean, in fact, the whole idea is like you go to the extreme of disgusting, because if you did it to then you can speak to anything else. So it's always about going to the extreme of it. And then when you show that, that's how they're showing to you that it's working. Oh, see, now you can go this extreme and you're okay with it. So it's like, that's how they're selling you that fake superpower, really.
That's right. So instead of trying to get you comfortable talking to the auditor by doing processes like, what could you say to your mother, or what could you say to your friend? It's more like, what could you say to a rapist? What could you say to a pedophile? What could you say to those are, I want to call them the exercises, because it's really it's not even, I want to say the process, but process doesn't mean anything. It's like, that's the exercise. And
when people say that we were brainwashed, Aaron, I mean, that's maybe like the characterization to do. It's to be put through those things, right? Because all of it was nonsensical. Now looking at it, like when we were there, we were super groomed to understand everything at a high level of something that didn't even make sense in the first place.
Yeah. Hold on. I'm going to star a comment real quick. So as a part of this grade 0 auditing action, there's kind of two prongs to it. There's the prong where you focus on horrible and disgusting and offensive identities. Mm-hmm. And then there's like types of people. And then there's horrible and disgusting and offensive subjects or topics that, as I'm going to read to you from the L. Ron Hubbard Technical Bulletin, something that no reasonable person would ever comfortably discuss. Right. And I got to be honest, if we're talking about full-grown consenting adults, I might even say I can see some value in doing exercises like this. Communication is something a lot of people in the world struggle with. I mean, that's like everybody knows that. When you're dealing with kids, and especially when you introduce the idea that there's no such thing as a kid, and it's actually invalidating to call a kid, it's actually condescending. It's actually damaging to them because you're actually making less. This is what a Scientologist would say. You're actually making less of them. You're minimizing them as a being, and you're putting them down. And you actually have to treat them like an adult because that's actually the truth of the matter. And anything less than that is almost insulting to the child. It's funny to think back on it, Serge, because as a 13, 14, 15-year-old kid, there were parts of this that I found personally very empowering. Because in my school situation, my school environment, I was very anxious. I was very nervous. I was very insecure. I was picked on and bullied a lot. So there's something about being validated and treated like you're an important and an equal person that can have, there can be some benefit to that. But the problem is in Scientology is it's all in. It's not like they're doing that to boost your confidence. They're doing that because you ain't going to get any protections as a child.
Well, and the way that we grew up too, Aaron, is that there is an incentive for a 12-year-old to get into a position of power. It is seductive. It is empowering. We were getting off on it at the time. We thought we were so powerful. We were so great, but it's only until the after effect happens and you go and you see a 12-year-old and you go, no. They, like you said, this is extreme levels. Like, we're not talking about like, talk to a kid and don't like goo goo gaga them, like just treat them like a person. But, as an adult, be responsible that you have the faculty to understand where they stand, right? Like, in that blurring of the line is what's so dangerous. It's just dangerous. It's what we're sounding the alarm on.
Yeah. Now, I'd promised people that you and I were going to give some real examples of this, and I brought you on because I'm hoping you're going to do some of the heavy lifting on this because there's a lot of stuff I don't like to say. Okay, but
Sure,
I'm going
to. I mean, realize that, Aaron. I mean, and this is actually like, to me, it's like this is the aspect of Scientology that needs to be exposed because this is Scientology. This is what I was teaching people. This is what I was giving people certificates to do. This is what I was brought in to facilitate and to broker these certificates. And I was 15. I didn't know what in the hell I was doing. Whatever they told me I was doing, I felt very empowered to do. But in hindsight, I couldn't be more revolted or disgusted. And I mean, that's why we're having these conversations, like, because there is this red flag that everyone missed. It's like, don't feel special. Like, everyone missed it. Like, everyone thought it was normal. Everybody thought it was cool. Everybody thought there was a good reason for it. And you know what? Is the year 2024. And now we're saying, you know what? It wasn't. So just figure it out now,
And just so everyone sees, this is the most recent updated version of the Scientology Auditor Training Course Pack Level 0. This is not ancient history. This is not cherry picking from old material. This is the current real deal stuff that Scientologists are currently reading. The name of this, I know you can't read this, but maybe some people can. The name of this bulletin is called Processes. And okay, so Routine 0A. I'm just going to read directly from it. It says, this is how the auditor puts together Routine 0A. 1, make a list of people or things one can't generally talk to easily. That includes parents, policemen, governments, and God, but it's a far longer list. The auditor must do this. It must never be published as a canned list. Now, the 0A part of this tends to be much milder than the 0B part of this, because Routine 0B says the auditor makes a list of everything he can think of that is banned for any reason from conversation or is not generally considered acceptable for social communication. This includes non-social subjects like sexual experiences, bathroom details. He says water closet details, because I guess when he moved to England, he started pretending he was British. Bathroom details, embarrassing experiences, thefts one has done, etc. Things nobody would calmly discuss in mixed company. Nobody would calmly discuss in mixed company. Okay, there are, and it says the instructions are specifically that the auditor is never to use a pre-prepared list. It always must be created custom by the auditor. Now, in my experience, let me know if they did this at Flag, because I remember in LA, what happened is whenever somebody would get to this level of their auditor training, where they were getting ready to audit this process on someone else, there was always someone who was like the most perverted, disgusting person, who was known to be the go-to guy to get ideas for what to put on the list. Just like when people were doing the TR's course and someone gets to bull bait, there's always someone that's known to be the most disgusting bull baiter. And that person's always brought in as like the toughest gradient of bull baiting. Like Vittorio Orlando was the supervisor that everyone knew he was the most disgusting, sexually inappropriate bull baiter. And so he would be brought in. At PAC, there was a course supervisor named Sean Collins, who was just known to be the most disgusting, vile pervert. And people would get giddy bringing Sean in to put the lists together for 0A and 0B. Now, guys, we're about to get very age inappropriate. Well, I mean, actually, kids aren't supposed to be watching these channels. We're about to get very X-rated, okay? And just for the sake of trying to appease the YouTube gods, let's space out our disgusting words to maybe just, you know, one word a sentence or something, because I don't know. YouTube's already throttling the hell out of this video because of the title. The title, Scientology's Child Counselors, This is Disgusting. I can tell you, I'm looking at the numbers. YouTube is already throttling the shit out of this video. Okay. So the instructions for 0A, honestly, are not quite as bad. It does say use things like policemen and parents, but you and I both know that's not how these lists get put together. So this list is going to include things. Let's just say rapist. I mean, not a crazy word. Let's just say rapist. Step 2 says using any one of the listed items, if you could talk to a blank, what would you say? Okay. So the thing is, it's simply, if you could talk to a rapist, what would you say? Now, just think, and you can substitute that with any other horrible. If you could talk to a serial killer, what could you say? If you could talk to a pedophile, what could you say? And this is done over and over and over and over and over again. It's a repetitive process. It's not just you just ask the person the question one time. You're asking this question dozens and hundreds of times over and over and over and over and over until the person has some sort of a win or realization that they would actually have no problem talking to a rapist. Or they would have, I feel I could easily talk to a pedophile. And again, if we're talking about full-grown consenting adults doing sort of a thought exercise or a communication exercise, I say, have at it. But imagine doing this process on a child, or imagine being a child who's trained and you're doing this process on an adult. That's what we're talking about. Okay. When we get to routine 0B, and it says, and I'm going to repeat, the auditor makes the list of everything he can think of that is banned for any reason from conversation or is not generally considered acceptable for social communication. This includes non-social subjects like sexual experiences, bathroom details, embarrassing experiences, thefts one has done, things nobody would calmly discuss in mixed company. Please do us a favor and just give us some examples of things that would go on this list. I'll do my best, but go ahead, get us started.
I mean, I just thought about like the bathroom. It's like they would do bloody tampons. If you could talk about bloody tampons, what would you talk about? And if you were talking about bloody tampons, what would you say exactly? So it was like, and it's very confusing as a child, right? Because like when you're there and you're in those cans strapped to them, you're not supposed to move. You're supposed to really stay still, right? It's like the whole thing is so intimidating, really, when you think about it, because it's just like you're in this thing, they're reading your mind. Please keep the cans quiet. Like you're always telling the person to not move. Oh, are you comfortable now? Okay, great. Stay there. Like, so it's all of that, right? It's like 3 hours of a question, because if the child is confused, as they should be, I mean, it's like, why am I being asked this question again? And it's just like the auditor just acts like, no, that's what L. Ron Hubbard said to do. He said to ask it over and over, and we're doing something very important here. So it's very intellectually abusive. And then it goes into going into the sexual subjects too, Aaron. What I realized is like You know, the FBI does all these raids of people that speak to kids in sexual ways on phones, even when the person that's doing the raids is not even a child. Just getting a person on a phone speaking like this to a child is already illegal. Well, in these hotels, you can speak to a child in a very sexual way, one-on-one, and nobody will, oh no, this is normal, this is a religious activity. It's like, what type of hypocrisy are we really talking about? And that's what's so dangerous about all of this, because as everything is groomed, everyone's going with a pitch that is not rooted in reality. The reality is the kids are being put at risk, and everybody's thinking that they're saving a world, but you know what? They weren't.
Yeah. Guys, if you are watching with kids in the room, now is the time to make them leave. YouTube's already throttling the shit out of this video. We're about to potentially get the video throttled even more. So just for the hell of it, if you're watching right now, please hit that like button and please blow up the live chat just to kind of force YouTube to push out notifications for the video. But because it's supposed to be things nobody would calmly discuss, you wouldn't use a word like intercourse. Instead, you would say fucking. That's what the auditing process would be. You wouldn't say fellatio. You'd say sucking cock. That would be the auditing process. Now, you're going to have to say this because I don't want to keep saying it. The reason I'm getting so upset about this is because when I did my academy levels at PAC, the person that gave me to audit on this was a cadet. Was like a 12-year-old girl. It was Katrina James. I don't know if you know Katrina. And she had just been forced to join the Sea Org with her parents. Her parents were some of the Sea Org members who were sent away from the Sea Org when they had kids. And so she grew up in the real world, and then they made her parents come back into the Sea Org, and they brought her back to LA against her will. She didn't even want to be there. And she was in the cadet org. And when people are doing their auditor training, they would just give the cadets to them because the cadets had nothing to do and everything. And they thought they would be easier to audit because they don't have all these crazy things in their past. And the thing is, I was just as horrified at having to do this as she was at having to receive it. And it's being done in the co-audit course room with an audience. Everyone can hear what you're doing. And like between auditing sessions, she would just go back to her room and cry. And even though it was embarrassing as shit at the time, it didn't occur to me at the time, just because of how we were raised, that it wasn't just uncomfortable. It wasn't just embarrassing. It's actually horribly abusive and damaging and like trauma inducing. And the thing is that when my brother was doing his auditor training, the reason I avoided doing the auditor training is because I knew that this is the shit they were having to do. And I was so horrified at the idea of having to do it myself that I did everything in my power to do the other courses instead, which, as you know, I ended up doing all of the different courses than the courses that he did. But this is the shit that my brother was doing when he was 14. And when he was doing these drills, he was twinned up with Jill Saferstein. And Jill Saferstein was one of those sick fucking perverts who took so much pleasure in going through these drills with Colin in the most disgusting and perverted way possible. And then the Scientologists, everyone justifies it as like, oh, well, that's just high confront. You're just training people to have high confront and to have good bull bait and all this kind of shit. So like step 2, once you have your list of the most disgusting, sexually inappropriate subjects you can possibly imagine, which let's just for the sake of the example, use something relatively comparatively innocuous as just the word fucking. Okay.
Yeah.
But let's say you're doing this on a child. Step 2 says an item from the list is included in the auditing command. What would you be willing to tell me about blank? Okay. So again, imagine you're either the child receiving the auditing or you're the child giving the auditing. And the question that's going to be repeated dozens or hundreds of times is, what would you be willing to tell me about fucking? And that's probably the easiest word that we could use, because let's just use another example. Just a dirty one that I could see someone putting on the list. Eating ass. So you're doing an auditing procedure on a child who doesn't even know what these things mean.
And they
by the way,
clear you. They work
and by the
clear
way,
you don't know. And they make
that's
you
right.
demonstrate it with them. Oh, do a demo here. How could it be if you've never seen it? Here, show me with this pen and paper. So if you're doing this, so what do you do? Like, it's sickening. It's sickening beyond. It's sickening.
That's right. Part of the auditing procedure is you're not allowed to do an auditing process using a word the person doesn't understand. So as a part of this process, you actually have to define the word for the person. They have to look up the definition. They have to tell you what that definition means in their own words. And then they have to give you a dozen sentences showing that they know how to use the word correctly, even if it's for something like eating ass. And then after the child is horrified at having to have defined this word with the auditor, the auditing procedure, the repetitive auditing procedure is, what would you be willing to tell me about eating ass? And it's being done with an audience in an auditing room where sometimes dozens of people are overhearing this. Yeah. This is what Scientologists push their kids to do. This is an example. All Scientologists who do auditor training do this course and audit this process on whoever they're given to do it to. If you ever see someone in a Scientology promotional piece saying, this is the new staff member for LA org, and she's 16 years old, and she's a class 5 auditor. Well, that means when she was 15 years old, she did this course, or 14 years old, or 13 years old. She did this course. And she had to audit this procedure. If she was lucky, as a child, she got to do it on another child. So maybe it was less humiliating. But chances are, she had to do it on a full-grown adult. And chances are, she didn't put the list of disgusting subjects together. They brought over the most disgusting person they could have and had that person put the list together. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about grooming. And I mean, this is textbook grooming. And guys, I still have to say, the examples that we've used here of the words, these are only the ones I'm just not horribly embarrassed to say. I mean, honestly, the goal is to put items on the list that even the auditor would be embarrassed to say. Like, I want to give some examples. I'm just too embarrassed to give them.
But everything, I mean, we don't even have to, you guys. But again, think about whatever you would find in the dark web there. That's your examples.
Okay,
Like,
I'm just going to say this, especially since Scientology is very white. It's very common to have an item on this list like sucking big black dick. I'm not kidding. Like
I mean,
it's almost
again,
like
it's all about flattening a button, right? So it's whatever's outrageous. And again, going back to they do it like that under the guise that because you've seen that extreme example, then look how your bandwidth of is been expanded, and it's yeah. I mean, so just so you don't understand that we're not hyperbolizing, like there's a logic to it that they go with inside of the hotel. Like, oh, we're really gonna push this button all the way here, and look, if you can talk about the most disgusting, sickening thing, then look how much your communication skills have expanded. And as children, our communication skills didn't expand. The boundaries is what we're getting blurred, and that's what we're sounding the alarm on. Blurring boundaries with children and subjecting them to this is, not a good idea. And everyone is implicated. Like there's not one single Scientologist that is not part of this. Because again, the pitch is that this is what's going to save a world. So it'd be great to understand how this is saving a world.
Yeah. Knowing that this was a major part of the auditing, don't get me started on the CCHs where you're supposed to touch that wall, touch your dick, touch that wall. Like I was like, don't get me started on that.
CCH 9. Yeah.
This is not only why I didn't want to do the auditor training, it's why I avoided auditing sessions at all costs. It is completely accurate for me to say that in my 30 years involved in Scientology from child to adult, I never received a single auditing session that I received on my own determinism. I never walked into a single auditing session that I wanted to receive. It was always something I had to do. And it's funny, someone told me recently that in my auditing folder, it said I was a no-gain case. I had no case gain. And it's like, of course I was a no-gain case. I didn't want any of the auditing to begin with. And even then, I didn't have much real auditing. I just had a lot of corrective auditing. Let me read the rest of this just for the hell of it. It's not like it necessarily gets worse, but maybe the viewers can decide for themselves. Okay. An item from the list is included in the auditing command. What would you be willing to tell me about blank? When they have run down, it says when they have run down, as in clocks. In other words, run out of answers. Ask them, who else could you say those things to? And then re-choose another subject from the list. Repeat steps 2 and 3. Continue to repeat steps 4 and 5. Above all, don't be critical of the PC. The PC is the person getting the auditing. And very calmly hear and seek to understand what the PC says. You never, by the way, seek to find out why the PC reacted or responded in some way. A real blunder is to say, why did you feel that way? Or why do you think you can't say that? You're not after causes of things at this level. You will find out the causes of things at level 6. At level 0, just keep them talking while you listen, and you use only the subject chosen to keep them talking. And that's the end of routine 0B. Now, focusing on this specific process is instructive because this is what's actually written in the actual bulletin. What this doesn't even touch on, and this gives you an idea of what kind of things people are expected to discuss in auditing sessions. What we haven't even touched on is that every single auditing session, no matter what level you're at, no matter whether it's a corrective auditing session or whatever, potentially includes, and even likely includes discussions of sexual subjects. Yeah. No matter what. And it doesn't matter if you're receiving the auditing or giving the auditing. Just there's steps to begin an auditing session, to set up an auditing session that always have the potential to get into some sort of age inappropriate sexual conversation. And that is why it really should be absolutely illegal to have minors, to have kids trained as Scientology auditors. And it should be illegal to have kids receiving Scientology auditing. I mean, it really should.
Well, and I would argue that it is, Aaron, because when I've now understood things at a at a level where, you know, it's like, look, don't listen, right? It's like, it's false imprisonment. Like there was an article from L. Ron Hubbard that said, don't let the person end the session on their own determinism. And, you know, how many times did I end up locked up in a hotel wanting to leave, desperate? But you had to, going back to this point of the win, right? Like they were abusing you, and then you had to convince them that the 4 hours of abuse you just received, you were
That's
getting
right.
something out of it. We were getting nothing out of it. We had to disassociate and then somehow bring ourselves to a point where we were like, no, never mind. This is
That's
great.
right.
I'm having a wonderful time. It's 4 hours and you just like, want to leave, but then you're going to get sent to another person that's going to double check that you really are happy, right? Because it's all about keeping these kids in a very false state of happiness. We weren't happy being abused. Breaking news, no child is. No child should be tortured. And, you know, we bought the pitch too. We thought there was a lot of logic to this. So at the time when we were doing it, it felt like it was legit, but it's like, no, in hindsight today, we know it's not legit. It's taking us to be in our midlife crisis to be able to understand how unlegit it is.
Yeah. If this auditing process is being done on a child and they say, I don't want to do this anymore, the auditor is literally not allowed to end the session. You are not allowed to end the session until the person receiving the auditing is happy. And so if someone says, I don't like this, I don't want to do this anymore, you're taught you just have to keep going, because that's the reactive mind kicking in. That's why we're doing this. We're doing this to get through that. In fact, the motto of Scientology auditing is, the way out is the way through. I'm like, no, the way out's the door. Nope. The way out is the way through. You have to go through it. We'll get through this. We'll get through this. Now, if it really bogs down and the pre-clear doesn't even want to participate. No, if they don't want to participate, you're going to make them keep doing it. But at some point, you might break out a correction list.
Mm-hmm.
Correction list of prepared list of everything that could potentially be wrong with the auditing session. But even a correction list opens the door to inappropriate sexual discussions. And so there's no way out for a child getting this auditing session other than being forced to continue doing it, and then being forced to keep doing it until they say they're happy with it. It is such mental abuse. And I remember being in Scientology and, you know, being around the academies and being around the co-audit spaces and just being like, and like wondering to myself, asking myself, how can everybody be comfortable with this? Not from an adult child perspective, just from a talking about these crazy words perspective. I'd be like, can I really be the only one who's terrified of having anything to do with this? Why does everyone seem to think this is amazing? Why does everyone seem to have no problem with this? Why does everyone seem happy to do auditing sessions and talk about crazy, embarrassing stuff? Like, I guess there's something wrong with me. Like, there was so much anxiety and angst that I experienced during my time at Flag, knowing that I was there to train as an auditor, but knowing that I wanted nothing to do with auditing. And it's almost like I got lucky that David Miscavige came out with the Golden Age of Tech program, because then instead of being on the auditor training lineup, I switched over to a course supervisor training lineup.
Yeah.
And it's a little easier to just supervise other people doing these drills than it is to do them yourself or to receive it. And it was sort of a saving grace.
Mm-hmm.
But like, even when we got back to Philadelphia, I refused to supervise the co-audits. I was like, I ain't doing that shit. So Edward DiMartino jumped in and supervised it because he's a fucking pervert. You remember Edward.
Yeah.
The most deeply closeted Scientologist ever known. I don't know what else I have to say on this really, but
I mean, I would just say again, Aaron, is we were pawns in a scheme, because no child was supposed to be going through what was done. It's just, it doesn't pass the smell test. And it really just that simple. It doesn't pass the smell test. Like, we're talking about common sense here. We're not talking about having some very highly opinionated opinion about something that no one can agree with. I mean, in terms of children, it's probably one of the only subjects that everyone can be on the same page. You know what? Like, leave them alone. Like, they need to be left alone. And we can stand up to these Scientology parents and call them out. Why the hell are you doing this to your kid? Like, we would do that if we would know that a parent was abusing their kid at a school. Nobody would be like, oh no, that's their religion, let's be hands off. It's like, no way. Why are you putting these kids through this? Why are you making it normal? How is it that you all are so numb about it, right?
Yeah.
Because again, the problem is the repudiation of these systemic, institutionalized policies that led to the behavior that is, come to find out, trafficking 101. I mean, this abusive, transactional hotel room experiences that adults get given a full blanket to have access to is not normal. And the only reason that they get away with it is because nobody understands what it is. Nobody wants to talk about it because it's nauseating AF, but how is it going to get stopped if it's never get confronted? I mean, going back to L. Ron Hubbard, literally, like, how are you going to ever change it if you can't even see it for what it is? And that's all that this moment is calling for. See it for what it is and make the change. That's why, all I ever say is kids cannot consent, because that's all we're saying is something that is already a fact. Whatever I get off on it, I like it, I want to pay. We don't care. Go do it. Like, I'm not going to lose sleep over whatever other adults want to do that's really benefiting them. But it's the fact that we were underage there, that it's, had they made the club 21 and up, Aaron, like, in what world could I want to talk about this? Like, maybe I got into it, like Tampa Brad, like you just brought it up the other day. It's like, he doesn't look like he needs to be saved. He's loving it in there. So you know what? Leave him there. But you know what? Don't let his kids in there, because we know what's going to happen to his kids. So it's his kids that need the advocacy, not Tampa Brad. We don't give an F what you do. We give an F that you're actually paying money to that hotel that is, we know they're still hiring minors to do the work. And it's like, that's not everything that's done with minors inside of those hotels is illegal and unacceptable, period. And it's just about time that people start confronting what they've done, and people really start speaking to the facts, because they've been flooding the airwaves with altered importances. And you know what? In like the investigatory technology that Owen Hubbard taught us is get to the Sherman tank. All of this stuff, what's the Sherman tank is what they're doing to kids. That's the indefensible. And that's been done at an industrial size scale. That's why it matters. And it's still being done to kids today because, the alarm hasn't been sound because they've been given, the benefit of the doubt. But where's the benefit of the doubt with that level 0 where everybody has to go through it?
Yeah. I kind of want to give a couple more examples just so people really get that the lack of protections for kids in Scientology, the lack of an even belief that there is such a thing as a kid, the fact that the point of this auditing process is to discuss things nobody would calmly discuss in mixed company, that these lists are also put together with particular regard for what would make the person being audited the most uncomfortable. So, even if you had like whether it's a young boy or a young girl, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, you're going to have items on this list. Like, again, we're talking, don't listen to this on speaker around your kids, but like literally, what would you be willing to tell me about swallowing cum?
Yeah.
God forbid the kid says, what's cum? Let's look it up in the dictionary.
Mm-hmm.
The kid's horrified, can't get out of the auditing session. That's not even an option. And then gets to, for the next 20 or 30 minutes, answer the question repetitively about, what would you be willing to tell me about swallowing cum? The point is, the more disgusting it is, the better. That's how these auditing processes are run. That's how these auditing processes are done. And of course, Scientologists are very homophobic. So, I mean, they're going to have things on this like ass fucking.
Yeah.
What would you be willing to tell me about ass fucking?
Bare
Seriously, guys.
Barebacking. That was one of,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Like we're not exaggerating this just for the purpose of the video. And this is one of those things, honestly, that if Scientologists were to dwell on this, maybe when you're in that bubble, you're in the bubble, it's impossible to truly appreciate how destructive and harmful this is to kids to give and receive this auditing. But I feel like when someone's coming out of Scientology, this is one of those things that would come crushing down with a really hard landing. When people come to terms with how fucking horrible it is that they ever put their kid onto auditor training or ever celebrated the fact that their 13-year-old finished this course or that their 11-year-old finished receiving that grade. I don't know. This is one of those things that I think the fact that I spent so many of my formative years being absolutely terrified to have anything to do with auditing because I knew that this is the kind of shit you were forced to talk about. I think those years and years and years of angst is why it never even occurred to me to let my kids participate in any part of Scientology without even saying it out loud. I think it was just because I was carrying that experience with me from my young years that I just knew there's no fucking, these guys are never going to hear the word Scientology, you know?
Well, and again, going back to the point, Aaron Hubbard told us the one thing man can and won't confront is evil. And this is so evil. This is the most evil of evils of evils. Like this is evil incarnate. Again, it's like the gullibility and naivete of underage kids such as ourselves, that we never saw ourselves as that, right? But it's like we bought the pitch. That's what happens when you're a child. Like someone pitches you something and you're like, okay, great idea. I mean, I'm sure you know better than me. And it was that easy to be influenced and to be made a so-called willing participant, a so-called volunteer is what we're told we were. Oh, no, you were a volunteer. Why are you complaining? You volunteered for this. In what world can anyone say that we volunteered for this?
Yeah. I know. Well, there it is. We've never done a video about this in quite this way before. I know it's a long video, so a lot of people won't watch it. And I don't know that I really want to chop it up and make it any shorter because I don't know. I don't even know how to do that on this topic, but at least it's out there. We've done it once. And this is what we're talking about when we're talking about kids in Scientology and kids in auditing and doing auditing. And even if Scientology were to say today, by the way, oh, you're not allowed to join staff unless you're 18 years old. You're not allowed to join the Sea Org until you're 18 years old. It wouldn't matter because you can still do this when you're 10.
Right.
As long as you're old enough to be able to understand the words in these bulletins, you will be put on these courses. There's no age restriction whatsoever. In fact, Scientologists believe that the younger you are when you do these courses, the better, because that means you're a reincarnated Scientologist, and that makes your parents have clout in Scientology. My sweet little Johnny is on his auditor training already. Oh, you must be so proud. That's so very well done. He's such an upstat.
I mean,
and every Scientologist watching this video knows that is completely true. So, there we go. All right, Serge, we did it.
we got through it.
Shall we end it?
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you for watching. I hope you are suitably horrified. I'm not going to do the normal outro to this, but we'll see you guys soon.